I found an ultrasound photo on her phone, but I knew for certain. This wasn't my child. My name is Edward, I'm 33 years old and I'm a truck driver. I drive routes all along the West Coast, sometimes for several days at a stretch. The work is hard, lonely, but it pays decently. I met Chelsea 8 years ago in a bar in San Francisco. She had just divorced her first husband, and I was also coming out of a painful divorce. We were both looking for something real, something stable. She worked as a secretary at a construction company, always looked neat, said the right things. After 2 years we got married. The first years were good. We bought a small house in the suburbs of San Francisco, discussed plans for the future, dreamed about children. Chelsea always said she wanted to wait a bit longer, until we're more firmly on our feet. I agreed because I trusted her. My routes became longer, I could be on the road for 4 or 5 days, but Chelsea never complained. She talked about her work, about colleagues, about some office stories. Everything seemed normal. I remember those early days vividly. Coming home after a long haul, the house would smell of her cooking. She'd greet me at the door with a genuine smile, asking about the road, about the places I'd seen. We'd sit on our small back porch, watching the fog roll in from the ocean and talk about everything and nothing. She seemed content. I certainly was. The house wasn't much, a modest 2-bedroom with a small yard, but it was ours. We'd spend weekends working on it together, painting rooms, planting flowers in the garden. Those were simple times, uncomplicated times. My job as a truck driver meant irregular hours and long absences. I'd haul everything from electronics to construction materials up and down the coast. Portland, Seattle, Sacramento, sometimes as far as the Mexican border. The pay was good enough to support us comfortably, not lavishly, but we never struggled. Chelsea's secretary job at the construction company added to our income. She worked for a mid-sized firm that handled commercial projects around the Bay Area. She'd come home with stories about demanding architects, difficult contractors, office politics. I listened, asked questions, showed interest in her world even though I spent most of my time in the solitary cab of my Freightliner. We had a routine. When I was home, we'd grocery shop together on Saturdays, do laundry, watch movies in the evening. Nothing extraordinary, but it was ours. We talked about having kids, but Chelsea kept postponing. Let's save a bit more, she'd say. Let's get the house fully paid off first. It made sense. I didn't push. Looking back now, I wonder if she ever really wanted children with me, or if she was already planning her exit strategy even then. Winter of last year started like any other. December in San Francisco. That means rain, fog, cold evenings that seep into your bones. I returned from another haul to Portland sometime in mid-December, tired but happy to be home. The trip had been particularly exhausting. Bad weather, traffic delays, a near accident with a sedan that cut me off near the Oregon border. All I wanted was a hot shower, a warm meal, and my wife's company. Chelsea met me at the door that evening, but something was different. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her hug was brief, almost perfunctory. When I asked if everything was okay, she blamed work stress. We've got this huge new project, she explained. A 50-story office complex downtown. The main contractor is demanding and my boss is on edge, which means everyone's on edge. I accepted the explanation. Construction projects could be stressful. I delivered materials to enough sites to know how tense things could get when deadlines loomed. But the following weeks brought more changes, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. She started working late more frequently. Meeting with the contractor, she'd text. Don't wait up. When I tried to initiate intimacy, she'd deflect with excuses. Headaches. Exhaustion. Her period. Once a week became once a month, then not at all. By February we hadn't been intimate in nearly 2 months. That's when the real worry set in. I'm not naive. I've been on the road long enough, stopped at enough truck stops, heard enough stories from other drivers about what happens when you're away too long. Marriages fall apart. People find comfort elsewhere. But I trusted Chelsea. Or rather, I wanted to trust her. I kept telling myself she was just stressed, that work was overwhelming her, that things would improve once the big project wrapped up. One evening in late February, Chelsea was taking a shower. I was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone vibrated on the counter. A message notification lit up the screen. I glanced at it reflexively. You do that with your spouse's phone, right? It's not snooping, it's just normal. The message was from someone named Seb. The preview read, "Can't wait for next time, babe." My stomach dropped. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The passcode was our wedding date. Oh, the irony. I unlocked it and opened her messenger app. What I saw shattered my world. Hundreds of messages. Thousands maybe. Photos. Videos. Him, Sebastian, worked as a construction worker on large projects. Tall, muscular, probably mid-30s. Covered in tattoos. The kind of guy who looks good in a tool belt and tight jeans. They'd been messaging for months. Detailed descriptions of their encounters. Meetings at motels when I was on the road. The intimacy they shared, described in explicit detail. Plans for a future together. But worse than the sexual content were Chelsea's words about me. Edward is nice but boring. He's always gone, doesn't even notice anything. I need passion, not stability. The sex with you is incredible, with him it's a chore. Each sentence was a knife twisting deeper. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This was calculated, sustained betrayal. I barely managed to close the phone before I heard the shower stop. I set it back on the counter exactly as it had been. Sat on the couch. Pretended to watch television. Inside I was burning. Rage, pain, disbelief, all churning together. But I forced myself to stay calm. If I wanted to know the full truth, if I wanted to handle this right, I needed evidence. Real, solid evidence that would hold up in court. The next morning, after Chelsea left for work, I drove to an electronics store and bought a small GPS tracker. That evening, while she slept, I attached it under the rear bumper of her Honda Civic. Now I could track her every move. The technology was simple. A magnetic case, real-time tracking through an app on my phone. I felt guilty doing it, but the guilt was overwhelmed by the need to know. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. The first few days showed nothing unusual. Home to work to the grocery store to home. Normal patterns. But then, on a Friday when I was supposedly on a haul to Sacramento, something interesting happened. Instead of going to work, Chelsea drove to a motel on the city's outskirts. She stayed there for 4 hours. I sat in my truck a few blocks away watching that dot on my phone screen, feeling something inside me break completely. But that was only the beginning. I started gathering evidence methodically, carefully. I photographed her car at various motels. I saved screenshots of all her messages whenever she was in the shower or asleep. I learned they'd met 6 months ago at her company's holiday party. Sebastian had been working on one of their projects and got invited to the celebration. Chelsea told me that evening that the party was boring and she left early. A lie. Just the first of many lies I'd uncover. Through her messages, I pieced together their entire relationship. The holiday party had been in late August. They talked, flirted. He was charming, she was receptive. They exchanged numbers. Started messaging. The first meetup was in September. Drinks after work that turned into more. The first motel visit was in October. After that, it became regular. Whenever I was on a multi-day haul, she'd arranged to meet him. In February, Chelsea announced she was going to Las Vegas with co-workers for the weekend to celebrate their supervisor's birthday. I said it sounded like a great idea, told her to have fun. Of course, the GPS showed me the truth. She drove to Vegas but not with co-workers. Sebastian drove the same route an hour later. They checked into the same hotel on the Strip, a mid-range place. Nothing fancy, but nice enough for a romantic weekend. I spent that weekend looking through our photo albums, reading her messages from Vegas that she was sending him in real time. Wish I could stay with you forever. Edward didn't even ask who I was going with. This feels like what life should be, exciting, passionate, real. Each message was torture, but I documented everything. Screenshots saved to a cloud account she didn't know about. Evidence mounting. The Vegas trip seemed to escalate things between them. The messages became more intense, more explicit about their feelings. Sebastian started talking about a future together. When can we stop hiding? He'd ask. When can I have you all to myself? Chelsea would respond with variations of soon, baby, just be patient. They were planning something. I could sense it. They were working toward a future that involved them being together publicly, permanently. Then came March and the discovery that changed everything. I found a receipt in her purse from a private clinic. An abortion. Performed 2 weeks earlier. I didn't even know she'd been pregnant. In her message thread with Sebastian, I found confirmation. Got it done today. Don't worry, Edward won't find out. I told him I was going to the dentist. I sat on our bedroom floor with that receipt in my hands, unable to breathe. She'd terminated a pregnancy. Whose? Mine. We hadn't been intimate in months, but theoretically, it could have been mine from before. But something inside me knew, this wasn't my child. The timeline fit Sebastian better. And she'd killed it without telling me she was even pregnant, without giving me a choice, without any consideration for what I might want or feel. That's when I made my decision. This had to end, but it would end on my terms. She'd controlled this relationship with her lies and deception for months. Now it was my turn to control how it ended. The following week, I drove to Chelsea's father's house in Oakland. Philip, my father-in-law, had always treated me well. We could drink beer together, discuss baseball, talk about life. He was a decent man, a retired electrician who'd worked hard all his life. I respected him, and I believed he'd understand what I was about to show him. I laid it all out. The screenshots, the photos of her car at motels, the GPS tracking data, the receipt from the clinic. I watched his face go pale, watched his hands shake as he held the evidence. He aged 10 years in those 10 minutes. "Jesus Christ, Edward," he finally said. "I'm so sorry. I thought she'd changed after her first divorce. I thought with you she'd finally grown up and become responsible. So did I, Philip. But people don't change, they just get better at hiding who they really are. What are you going to do? I want a divorce. But I need your help with something important." I told him about our joint savings account. About $50,000 accumulated over years of hard work on the road. Money I'd earned driving through storms, through exhaustion, through long lonely nights away from home. I knew Chelsea well enough by now to understand that the moment she learned about the divorce, she'd try to take everything she could. Her first divorce had ended exactly that way. She'd extracted every last cent from her first husband through aggressive legal maneuvering and claims of emotional distress. "I'm going to withdraw the cash and give it to you for safekeeping. Officially, it'll be documented as a loan you gave me years ago, before the wedding. Remember when we discussed that possibility?" Philip nodded slowly. The year before our wedding, we had indeed discussed the possibility of him loaning us money for the down payment on the house. In the end, I'd managed to save enough on my own, but the email exchanges about that potential loan still existed. Documentation that could be presented in court if necessary. Over the next week, I systematically withdrew our savings. Small amounts, 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Nothing that would immediately trigger suspicion or bank alerts. Each withdrawal was documented as being for home repairs, truck maintenance, or other plausible expenses. The cash went to Philip, who stored it safely. I left 3,000 in the account, enough to look normal, not enough for Chelsea to do anything significant with. But I wasn't finished. I knew from their messages that Chelsea and Sebastian were planning something together. "When can we finally be together openly?" she'd written. "Soon, babe, just be patient a little longer," he'd responded. They were waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances. I decided to help them accelerate their timeline, just not in the way they hoped. Through my friend Jack, another truck driver I'd known for years, I learned where Sebastian was currently working. A major construction site in downtown San Francisco, a new 50-story office complex. Jack knew the construction supervisor. They played poker together every other Friday. "Listen," I told Jack over beers one evening. "I've got information that might interest your friend. One of his workers is stealing tools and equipment from the site, selling it on the side for extra cash." Jack frowned. "You sure about that? That's serious. My wife works as a secretary at a construction company." She overheard a conversation. "The guy's name is Sebastian Carver." It was a lie, of course. But Jack passed the information along, and the construction supervisor started paying closer attention to Sebastian. When Sebastian was found on the site after hours near the equipment storage area, he'd simply forgotten his jacket there. The suspicions intensified. Especially when someone anonymously reported seeing Sebastian loading something into his pickup truck late one evening. That anonymous tipster was me, naturally. And that something in the pickup was his own personal construction equipment that he was transporting home after working on a side project. But from my photograph, taken from a distance in the twilight, it wasn't obvious. The photo was ambiguous enough to raise questions. Sebastian was fired 2 weeks later. Management couldn't prove theft definitively, but the suspicion was enough to terminate his contract. In the construction industry, reputation is everything. Word spreads fast. Other major companies didn't want to risk hiring someone with a cloud of suspicion hanging over them, especially for theft. It's a liability issue, an insurance issue. Chelsea was devastated. I watched her message him frantically. "What happened? Why were they fired you?" He responded with something about injustice, about being set up, but he had no idea who or why. He was genuinely confused, genuinely hurt. Part of me almost felt bad. Almost. But I knew what I was doing. And this was only the beginning of their unraveling. In April, I finally made my move. I returned from a haul earlier than planned. Supposedly my truck had broken down and the company sent me home to wait for repairs. Chelsea was home talking on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call. "We need to talk," I said calmly. She tried to smile. "About what?" I laid it all out on the kitchen table. Printouts of messages. Photos of her car at motels. GPS tracking data showing her locations. The receipt from the clinic. Everything organized chronologically, undeniable. I watched the color drain from her face, watched her hands start to tremble. "Edward, I can explain everything." "Don't. I don't want explanations. I want a divorce. Tomorrow you'll move out. The house was purchased with my money, it stays with me. But we can fix this. It was a mistake, 6 months isn't a mistake, Chelsea. Hundreds of meetings aren't a mistake. An abortion you never told me about isn't a mistake. These are choices. Your choices. And now I'm making mine." She started crying, but her tears didn't move me anymore. I'd seen her real face in those messages. I knew what she really thought about me. I'd heard her describe our intimate moments as chores she had to endure. I'd read her tell Sebastian that I was just a safe option, while she figured out what she really wanted. The woman crying in front of me wasn't the woman I'd married, or rather, the woman I'd married had never really existed. "You can go to Sebastian. If he still wants to see you, that is." Her eyes widened. "What did you do?" "Me? Nothing. It just so happens that his reputation is ruined. Strange, isn't it? Karma has a way of working things out." The next few weeks were brutal but necessary. My lawyer, recommended by Philip, was ruthless and thorough. We presented all the evidence of adultery. In California, while it's a no-fault divorce state, evidence of infidelity can still impact property division and spousal support decisions. Chelsea tried to fight back, but she lacked money for a good attorney. The joint savings had mysteriously vanished, and Sebastian, having lost his high-paying job, couldn't help her financially. She tried to lean on Sebastian for support, both emotional and financial, but he started pulling away. Without his job, without money, he wasn't the attractive, confident man he'd been before. And Chelsea, without my financial stability and without the secure home I'd provided, wasn't as appealing either. Their messages became less frequent, cooler in tone. Reality was setting in, and reality wasn't nearly as romantic as those motel rooms had been. But I still wasn't finished. Through another friend who worked at the same construction company where Chelsea was employed, I made sure that management learned about her affair with a contractor. Their company had strict policies about personal relationships with contractors, conflict of interest concerns, potential for information leaks about projects and bids. It was a liability issue. Emma, her coworker who'd never liked Chelsea due to her condescending attitude, was happy to confirm the rumors to management. "Yes, I saw them leaving a hotel together that time after the holiday party. And she always seemed to take extra long lunches whenever Sebastian was on site for meetings." Chelsea was let go in mid-May. The official reason was staff reduction due to project completion. The real reason was loss of trust from management. They couldn't risk having someone with questionable judgment handling sensitive project information. Now she had no job, no house, no money. Sebastian couldn't find decent work either. Rumors about him had spread through the industry. Professional networks in construction are tight-knit, and word of the theft suspicions had made him virtually unemployable for major projects. They tried to stay together for a while longer, but their relationship crumbled quickly under the weight of reality. Romance in motels is one thing. Real life without money, with constant arguments about bills and blame, is entirely different. By June, Sebastian simply disappeared from her life. He blocked Chelsea on all messaging apps, changed his phone number, cut all contact. I later learned he'd moved to another state, Arizona, I think, trying to start over far from the reputation he'd earned here. He'd taken a job at a small construction company there, making barely above minimum wage, working on residential projects instead of the major commercial developments he'd been part of before. Chelsea tried to reach out to me through mutual acquaintances. She asked for help, said she had nowhere to live. I sent a simple message back through those same acquaintances: "You made your choice. Live with it." The divorce was finalized in July. The court sided with me on nearly everything. The evidence of her adultery was overwhelming and indisputable. The house remained mine. The car remained mine. Even our furniture stayed with me because I could prove I'd purchased it with my earnings. Chelsea received only her personal belongings and moved out to rent a room somewhere on the city's outskirts. Philip called me after the final court hearing. His voice was heavy with disappointment and regret. "I never thought my daughter was capable of something like this. I'm sorry, Edward. You deserved so much better than what she gave you. I know, Philip. Thank you for your support throughout all of this. Those funds you transferred to me for safekeeping, when do you want them back? I'll come by next week. I collected my $50,000 and deposited it into a new account that Chelsea would never know about. That money represented years of my hard work, days and nights on the road, time away from comfort and home. She hadn't earned a single cent of it. Several months passed. I heard through acquaintances that Chelsea still couldn't find decent employment. References from her previous company were neutral to negative, and in their industry, everyone knows everyone. Word had spread. Sebastian supposedly moved to Arizona, working at some small construction site for minimal pay, trying to rebuild from nothing. I continued driving my routes. The same work, lonely and hard. But now I returned to an empty house and it didn't sadden me. Better solitude than lies. Better silence than the fake smile of someone who's betraying you. The house felt cleaner somehow, lighter, despite being empty. The absence of her presence was better than the presence of her deception. Sometimes friends asked if I wasn't lonely. I answered that I'd gotten used to it. Sometimes I remembered those first years with Chelsea, when everything seemed real. But now I understood, only what I felt was real. Her feelings had always been performance, calculation, manipulation. One evening in October, Jack stopped by. We sat on the porch, drank beer, watched the fog creep in from the ocean like a living thing. The evening was cool, quiet, peaceful. You know, I've always wondered how quickly everything fell apart for Chelsea and that construction worker, he said thoughtfully. Karma, I answered shortly. Jack looked at me carefully, then smiled. Yeah, probably. Karma works in mysterious ways. He didn't ask more questions and I didn't offer explanations. Some things are better left without commentary. Jack was smart enough to read between the lines and he respected my silence. Now it's winter again. A year has passed since that day when I first saw that message on her phone. San Francisco is covered in fog again, rain beats against the windows of my house. My house? Now I can say that without bitterness, without pain, without that hollow feeling in my chest. I don't regret what I did. Chelsea wanted to have everything, stability with me and passion with Sebastian. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. But life doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences. Actions have reactions. You can't build a future on lies and expect it to stand. She lost everything. Her job, her reputation, her money, her lover, her husband. She's alone in a rented room, without the future she'd dreamed about, without the passion she'd chased, without the stability she'd taken for granted. Sebastian also lost everything and fled to escape the ruins he'd helped create. And me? I lost the illusion of a happy marriage. But in return I found something more valuable, peace. Knowledge that I'm no longer living in a lie. That empty house I returned to after my hauls is honest emptiness, not fake coziness. That silence is genuine silence, not the quiet before another betrayal. Last night I was driving back to San Francisco from Portland, and at some point I pulled over to the side of the road to rest. I looked up at the starry sky above the desert, at the vastness spreading all around. And for the first time in a long time I felt something like peace. Real peace, not the false contentment I'd felt before. Life goes on. Roads stretch forward. And the past, let it stay where it belongs, behind me in the rearview mirror, growing smaller with every mile. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.